Hey folks, good morning. Rob Anderson here with Bucket List Fly Fishing. In this video today, I'm going to show you how to tie the #1 most important peacock bass fly of all time. I say that with confidence because I have 20 years experience fishing for peacock bass. I've been tying, selling flies for peacock bass this entire time. I've fished hundreds of different tributaries for several different species of peacock bass. And I can say that the fly I'm going to show you today, hands down, outfishes any other fly that has ever been casted to a peacock bass. I was very fortunate to luck into this fly pattern about 10 years ago while tying a fly that I tie commercially for Umpqua feather merchants called the Reducer. Now, the Reducer was my first attempt at coming up with a commercial pattern for peacock bass. Being a booking agent and now an owner of an operation in Brazil, we are involved in every aspect of the trip, from the airline tickets all the way down to what pound leader you use and the equipment you bring, and eventually the fly selection. The Reducer, which is still a great pattern for peacock bass, is nowhere near my favorite. I have one favorite fly. The name of this fly is the Space Invader, and we tie it in 4 or 5 different color combinations. The one I'm going to show you today is, without a doubt, hands down, the #1 color. It's the #1 fly. And if you are going fishing for peacock bass in the Amazon, if you do not take this fly with you, you're doing it wrong. So stay tuned, folks. I'm going to start off here in a minute showing you the prep work that goes into making this fly, the materials list, and then eventually we're going to get down to business and I'm going to tie a few of these flies for you. Okay, so the materials list for this fly are, starting with the hook. I use a Umpqua Feather Merchants Tiemco hook. It's a 600 SP, size 2/0. You can use size 3/0, but somewhere in this neighborhood of size is perfect for streamer patterns for peacock bass. We have 2 kinds of flash in this fly. The tail flash is Flashabou Mirage in just the normal pearl color. When you take it out of the package, it looks like this. And then we also have body flash, which we use Mirage Accent Flashabou. It's got some kind of squiggly properties to it, and it sticks out, and it's great for body flash for any streamer. It's a bucktail fly, and this fly has 3 different colors of bucktail. I get my bucktails from Hairline because they tend to have longer fibers. So the most important color is white. And then for the top of the fly, we use fluorescent blue. And the bottom of the fly, we use hot pink. So those 3 colors of bucktail. Then for the sides or the scales of this streamer pattern, we incorporate natural grizzly saddles. The Magnum saddles tend to be wider and longer and work really well for this fly. So this is going to go right down the sides of this fly. Then it has eyes in the front. I use a 5/16 oval pupil eye. We're going to need some glue for this fly. Zap-A-Gap, this one is a brushable, works really well. And white flat waxed nylon thread. And there is no weight in this fly at all. So that's the materials list. In a minute here, I'm going to show you how we do the prep work for this fly. This fly is a really extensive tie. When you first start doing this fly, it could take you up to 30 minutes to complete one fly. I'm at the point now where I can tie one in about 10 minutes, maybe a little longer. But the prep work is really important if you want to get down to almost tying these flies at a commercial level, so it's not taking you long to tie them. This fly is very extensive. It has a lot of materials, and it's going to take a while. So What I do is set up my station completely before starting to wrap the first turn of thread around the hook. I have all my materials laid out and I have everything prepped to use. So first, the body flash. So what I do is I take the body flash out of the package and I have kind of a determinate length of how long I would like for this flash to be. And it works out to be about 3.5 inches or so of material. So I will measure out 3.5 inches of material and cut this off. What I do next is I put it in a plate because I'm going to take it out of the plate and grab it as I turn and use it to put it around the fly, which I'll show you as we're tying it. But there is some prep work to get this ready, and just a paper plate full of flash is basically how the prep work for this fly. It's very simple. It's weird, but simple. And then the other really important step is on the hackles. Now, the hackles that we use down the side, we limit them to about 2.5 inches. If they get too long, they will wrap around the hook while you're casting them and they won't fish right. They'll foul the fly. So you want a 2.5 piece of this from the tip. So you're going to go in and select the feathers off of this saddle that are usable for the sides of this fly. So I'm going to go in and pick one here for you. So I picked out a couple. Then what I'm going to do is I have a ruler here on my desk. And this step, I will do this for 20 or 30 or 40 flies. I'll just do this one step at a time. So I'm going to take the feather down on my ruler and I'm going to measure down to 2.5 inches. From the 2.5 inch mark down, I'm going to pull the feathers back. Get them out of my way. Okay. And from there, I'm going to cut off just the usable feather for the side of my fly. Now, if I were to tie this in right now to the side of the fly, this feather, and if you do it, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's going to bend and twist. And by the time you get it tied down, it's not going to be flat. So you have to prep this fly with Zap-A-Gap in advance. So you take and you just put Zap-A-Gap on the part of the feather that is going to be tied in. And then you set it somewhere to dry. And you need to let this dry for a while. So that's what I say. You're going to do this step all at once and maybe do enough feathers for like 20 flies. I actually have a pile of them already prepped and ready to roll for our tying session here today. But these all have the Zap-A-Gap glue on the end and are ready to be tied into the side of the fly. It's a 2-aught Tiemco 600 SP. And I am going to wrap my thread just on the very back, sparsely as I can, just to get it tied down on the hook. Now, the first step is the tail flash. So if you remember, it came in this package, okay? So as a commercial tyer, I look for ways to maximize the use of my materials and also my time. So what I do is I take this material out of the package all the way up to where it came from the factory with this little, whatever it is, a staple or something holding it together. I'm going to take the exact amount of strands that I need for this fly, which is, I don't know, maybe 20 or so for the tail flash. And I'm going to cut it off as close as I can to the very top because I want to use this entire length. Now what I'm going to do, wet the end there. I'm going to make sure all the fibers are exactly even. And I'm going to tie just the barely end tip of this down really good and crank hard. Get this really tied down so it doesn't pull out. Okay. Then I'm going to bring my thread just to in front of my thread base and stop. I don't want to do a lot of wraps here. I'm going to take this material. I'm going to pull it as far back, stretching it out all the way. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to put them on here, and I'm going to find the halfway point, and I'm going to cut this material in half. What I've done now is created tail materials for 2 flies, not just one, because what I have in my hand is the perfect length for the second fly. So I'm going to wet the end so it sticks together to itself so it doesn't just fall all over my desk. So I wet it down, and I find a safe place to sit it, which is down here on the base of my vise, where I can go and pick this up and grab it to tie fly number 2. Okay, now getting back to fly number 1, I look down and I missed a couple strands, so I get that cut off and my tail is intact. Stick that down in my material clip here to get it out of my way for the rest of the tie. Now, the bucktail, the first layer of bucktail is the most important. When you buy a bucktail, all bucktails are not made equally. Some of them have longer fibers, some of them have shorter. With the amount of flies that I tie, I buy white bucktails by the dozen. And I will go through and separate them out and find the ones with the longest hairs for this pattern. The very first layer of this pattern, the first layer of bucktail, determines how long this fly ends up. If we were using synthetic materials, you get to decide the length of your fly. But when using bucktail, the length of your hook, which starting this first layer on the very back of the hook adds length, and then finding a bucktail with some extremely long fibers for the first layer is important. So once I find this long bucktail, I only use this, or the longest parts of it, for the tail. I won't waste it on other parts. So this one has some really long fibers right here. If I were to measure them for you, just so you understand what I think long is, they are about 4 inches in length, the bucktails. And then when you take, another 1.5 inches of the hook, I can make this fly about 5 to 5.5 inches long with some flash sticking out the back, to almost 6 inches. It's a perfect length for casting, catching, everything. So I'm going to take off about the amount of a pencil. Okay, you don't want to get too much material. This fly needs to be on the sparse side because there's a few layers. Then what I'm going to do after I cut it off at the base, making it as long as I can, I'm going to go down and I'm going to grab it by the tail, because there's a lot of feathers, a lot of hairs in here that are not long. They're short. So when I do this, I come from the other side and I pull out, and I can pull out all the short hairs. And then you take it and you can kind of work some of those shorter hairs out so that you don't bulk up this fly with short hairs. Okay, once I do that and I'm confident or comfortable that I've got it right, I'm going to go back and you can see that I need to trim again. So I'm going to trim just to the very end here so that all the bucktail is even. I'm going to put it on my hook, just enough of it so that I can tie it down where my thread is, right in front of my thread base here. I'm going to sift it down around the hook. I'm going to do 2 loose wraps. After the 2 loose ones, I'm going to come with a third one and I'm going to start tightening. The hair is going to start spinning on the hook a little bit, and I'm going to get it tied down really tight. Then I'm going to take my hairs and get them all around the hook completely so it covers up the hook all the way around. Then I'm going to hold back behind where I've tied it down, and I'm going to make as few wraps as possible, but it's important to tie all of the hairs in the front down so that they don't move, spin, pull out when you catch a fish. Okay? So now I'm done with my first step, which is tying in the first layer of bucktail. Step number 2 is the first layer of body flash. So remember, we had our body flash in a plate, and you're going, well, Rob, if you lay them in a plate like that, they're not all the same. Exactly. So what I'm going to do is pick up what I call a usable amount for this first layer. And as you can see, they are all different lengths at the end. I do this because I'm not going to tie them all in at once. I want to tie them in around my thread base here. So I'm going to pick the longest one, the one that sticks out the furthest. I'm going to wrap it down. I'm going to turn
my vise a little bit. I'll wrap another couple of fibers down. Turn my vise again, wrap another couple fibers down. Turn my vise again, wrap another couple fibers down. And go all the way around till I have flash all the way around the thread base. Once that's done, I come back, hold it back again, and tie down all that flash, staying towards the back of the hook as far as possible. Okay, step 2 done. The body flash on the first layer of bucktail. Now the second layer of bucktail is the body of the bucktail. So it's going to be white again, but it's not going to come all the way back in length. I'm going to cut these off really short so that we can get a round profile to this fly. So I'm going to find now a bucktail with shorter fibers so that I don't waste the long fibers, because I know I'm going to cut these off shorter. So actually on this exact same bucktail up towards the top, there are some shorter fibers that I won't use for the tail. So again, I'm going to cut off about a pencil in diameter. I'm going to come to the tail, and it's going to be off the screen a little bit, but I'm going to sift out all of those shorter fibers. I'm going to come back where I'm going to tie it in, and I'm going to measure this to where I know it's only going to be about half of the first layer. You can see that. I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to cut this layer down. And where that first layer was about 4 inches, this second layer is maybe 2.5 inches. Okay. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring it to where my thread is, just in front of the thread base on the hook. I'm going to work the bucktail all the way around the hook. A couple really loose turns. The third turn is tighter. The fourth turn is even tighter. I start to manage the bucktail all the way around the hook. And then I finish this layer by tying down all of the bucktail back and forth, trying not to progress the thread any further towards the front, because we have one more layer to do. Okay, once I get this layer down as I have now, that is step 3. Now I'm going to take my rotary vise and I'm going to turn my fly upside down for the next layer of bucktail, which is going to be the belly side, the fluorescent pink. Okay, now because I'm going to have a pink side and a blue side here, I'm not going to tear off quite as much material, because if I do, it's going to get too big in the front. So now we're talking about half a pencil in diameter for the bottom layer. And I don't want to cover up the back part of the white on this. So again, these hairs are going to be much shorter and only cover up about half of the fly. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to sift out all the excess hairs I don't like. I'm going to come and get my length, which I think I like it about right there. I'm going to cut it off. And then I'm going to put the hair back in my right hand. I'm going to separate this material in half. And when I go to my hook, I'm going to put half of it on one side of the hook and half of it on the other side. I come around with my left hand to hold it in place just behind the eye of the hook. And I need to keep these wraps so that this pink stays on the bottom. Get it nice and wrapped down. Then I'm going to turn my hook back over with my pink on the bottom. Now I'm going to do the exact same step for the fluorescent blue. I'm going to take about half a pencil. I'm going to get rid of the excess. I'm going to get my desirable length. And I want the top to be longer than the bottom. I want it to kind of cover like the back of a minnow. So it's going to be a little bit longer than what I did on the bottom. God bless the fish that belly is bigger than its back, because it's going to get eaten. So then I'm going to place the blue right on top, trying to keep it from migrating around the sides of the fly and staying right on top. With as few thread wraps as possible, because we're not done yet. Okay. The next step is to go back to a second layer of body flash. Same as before, tie a couple strands in at a time, surrounding the entire fly all the way around, There's no real rocket science to this. It's just getting flash kind of coming out on all sides. So once I do that, I'll come back. I'm going to be careful not to do too many wraps so the head doesn't get too big. Now the thread is going to go all the way back to the back of the thread base here. My next step is to tie in my feathers, the sides of this fly. Very simple. It's going to be hard to see. I'm going to try to turn my fly up here so you can see it. Just right on the side, and because I have that glue base to it on the sides, it doesn't turn or spin on me. A couple wraps is all I want because it's going to get plenty more wraps here in a minute. Take my other side. And now I've got basically a finished fly except for the eyes. Now, what I need to do is make sure I have a long enough thread base to set my eyes on. So I'm just going to take the eyes in the package here for a minute and kind of measure one of them. And I do have it long enough. So to give you an idea for future reference, this is basically 3/8 of an inch thread base on this fly will allow this hook, this eye to sit on it properly. Okay, so from this point, I'm done with my thread now. And I'm going to go in, tie my knot, pop off my thread, and I'm finished doing everything but gluing the eyes on the front of the fly. Now, normally what I would do is not do this step. I would go on and do 10 of these, 20 of these, 30 of these, and then one day I'm going to sit down and glue on all the eyes all at once as a different step. This is how we tie flies in a much more efficient way and a lot faster. But for purposes today, because you need to see this, I'm going to show you how to put the eyes on. So you have your eyes. I'm going to go back to my Zap-A-Gap, and I mean a very sparse amount, just one little drop is all you need. One little dot, one little wet spot. It's not much at all. Get it on the two sides of this fly, and then I'm going to go take my eye, place it on the side, take the other eye, place it on the side. I want to get them kind of where I want them to be because they are going to get stuck on here with this glue, which is what I want, because after this step, I take and put them in a pile waiting for me to do the two-part epoxy. Okay, folks, so the last step of this fly is making an epoxy head around the eyes that we glued on. So I use a 5-minute, two-part epoxy. You've got the hardener and the resin. You put them together, you mix them up, equal parts, and basically in 5 minutes, it's completely dry. I use the 5-minute epoxy because it does dry fast. So that I can be finished with the flies. And when you get good at this, if you have a fly dryer, you can you can glue on maybe 4 to 6 heads in that 5 minutes. If you're just getting started, you're new to this, a couple maybe, so you don't need a lot of glue. And if you don't have a fly turner, even one. So it's this time consuming. This fly takes a long time to tie if you're not set up to tie it commercially. So anyway, two-part epoxy. I'm going to squeeze a little pile, equal parts on just some piece of cardboard or something. And then I'm going to take a toothpick and mix it up real good. And once it's mixed up, I'm going to pick up some of the glue on the toothpick without getting too much and start to spread this on the thread, on the top and the bottom, around the sides. I like to make sure it goes all the way around behind the eye into the bucktail and the flash, so it's a good anchor point there. And just like that, I'm finished putting it on. I'm going to stick it into the fly turner, and the fly turner is going to rotate it so the epoxy doesn't drift while you're doing it. If you don't have a fly turner, you have to do this on your vise, which now I'm going to show you how you have to do this without the fly turner. So basically, you do the exact same process to start, but you never take it out of your vise. And it'll look just as good when I'm done, but it'll take me 4 to 5 times longer. And that fly turner, they're expensive, but they are worth their weight in gold if you tie a lot of epoxy headed flies, or flies that need, even drying. So basically now I've got this one finished. If I don't own this fly turner, I am stuck for 5 minutes basically kind of doing the work myself, moving this fly around occasionally as the glue dries so that it doesn't, the glue doesn't shift or, migrate to one side. You'll get a fly that looks like it's got a goiter sticking out the side of its neck if you don't turn this epoxy while it's drying, because it is thin. It will run right off this fly if you're not turning it. And what I do is I keep my toothpick in the excess glue and I kind of move it around to see, and it'll start to get hard around the toothpick, and eventually it will harden the toothpick onto itself. And when that happens, you know that the head of your fly is dry and you're good to go. And even though this this epoxy, the hardener's got a little yellow tint to it, if you look on this fly, the head comes out crystal clear once you mix the two together. When these flies get old, when they're in your, if you don't use them 2 or 3 years old, it'll start to turn a little color over time, but I don't think it changes how they fish. But this epoxy that I use, this Zap 2-part epoxy, is really one of the clearer ones. Comes out really nice and clear. Okay, so you get the gist of it. Basically, the turner will turn for 5 minutes, or you'll turn it on your vise for 5 minutes to get the head looking like you want. Once that's done, I'll give you a little bit more of a close-up here. Absolutely the best peacock bass fly pattern there is, and that pink, blue, and white color is the best color of all the colors that we tie this fly in. To try to explain to you why this is the best peacock bass fly there is, let me explain the fishing to you a little bit. When you're fishing for peacock bass with a fly rod, generally you're going down the bank in a boat with either a pole or a trolling motor, and you're casting at the bank. You're casting at trees, sticks, logs, the bank, rocks, structure, shade, anything. Normally the boat is sitting in anywhere from like 3 to 20 feet of water. Averaging out, let's say you're sitting in 8 feet of water. You cast up to the bank, and at the bank, obviously it's shallow. Your fly lands, you have an intermediate sinking line, you stick your rod in the water, and you start to retrieve your streamer. The reason your fly has no weight in it is because you are always going to be casting it in shallower water than where your boat is. So you want basically your fly line to sink a little faster than your fly, because you want it to sink at the shore down towards the boat deeper, so that when you retrieve and it comes off the bank, it tends to start going down through the water column as it's going into deeper water. Now what happens is
you hook a fish in shade or something near the shore, and you start stripping them kind of out, getting them away from the bank, and there could be another, whole school of fish following them out. And once that happens, those fish get out into deeper water, like halfway back to the boat in, say, 4 or 5 feet of water, and they start to kind of sink down as they, stay out there for a little while. And it becomes important then to kind of fish your fly down into even deeper. So you're going to want to let your running line or your fly line sink so that your streamer will get down to where these fish now have come off the bank but have sunk down into 5 or 6 feet of water. So if your fly sinks faster than your fly line, your fly is on the bottom over here at the bank, and your fly line is not getting down to where these fish have moved to. If your fly sinks slower than your fly line has a chance now. You cast and you pause, you let it sink a little bit, and then as you retrieve with your rod tip in the water, you can get your fly down to where the new location of where these fish have moved to. And until you understand the fishing, you won't understand why this fly works so well. The other reason this fly works so well is it is the most accurate big streamer there is. After I practice for a little while, I'm not a fantastic distance caster. I hold my own because I do this all the time, but that's not my deal. My deal is I can take this fly and put it in a red solo cup once I start getting my, casting stroke down again after time off. Fishing for peacock bass, accuracy is so important because you have to be near structure in the shade. And if you're not accurate, you miss long 50% of the time and you miss short 50% of the time. If you're not throwing your fly on the bank and getting hung up on something every once in a while, you're not trying hard enough. So this fly for me allows me to make 700 or 800 casts a day, and very few of those casts end up halfway up some tree on the bank. So there's a lot of different characteristics that make this fly the best fly there is. So encourage you to try to tie it on your own. If you want some help, call me. I'll walk you through it. Or we have them on our online store. You can buy our guide packs where this fly and all the other Space Invaders are $120 a dozen. So if you just like tying flies and you want to tie flies for your trip to the Amazon, it's awesome. It's one of the best things is tying these big streamers and taking them down there. But if you're doing it to save money, stop right now, get on my website and buy some flies. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed learning how to tie the Space Invader. My name's Rob Anderson, and I hope you're coming fishing with me sometime soon. Take care.